Good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Fred Brink. Mayor Gary is out of town tonight, so I'll preside over tonight's meeting. And I'll call the West Richland City Council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Before we get started, I'll ask Jessica Bates to read the hybrid meeting ground rules and then call the roll, please.
Tonight's meeting will be held in person with the virtual meeting component. If you are participating virtually, please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the Mayor Pro Tem, to use. You can change this by right-clicking on your video view and selecting Rename. Audience members present in the council chambers will be called upon first during public comment periods. Those participating remotely should virtually raise your hand if you wish to speak. To virtually raise your hand, click on Participants and then click on Raise Hand. If you are participating by phone, only press *9 to raise your hand. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right, and Brent Gary asked to be excused. Richard Bloom.
Here.
Fred Brink.
Here.
David Fetto.
Here.
May Hayes. Here. Kate Moran asked to be excused. John Smart.
Here.
Ken Stoker.
Here. Council, may I have a motion to excuse Mayor Gary and Councilmember Moran?
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Councilmember Fetto, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember Fetto. Council, the agenda is before you. Are there any changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Presentations. We have a presentation tonight. Finance Director Aaron Gwynn will present the first quarter 2024 financial presentation. Ms. Gwynn.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink. Good evening, council and the audience. This evening, I'm presenting the 2024 first quarter financial report. I'll start with an overview and an economic update, followed by specific financial information regarding the general fund, followed by all the other funds. For the first overview of economy slide, we'll start with unemployment, which has increased to 6.6% for Benton County. This is up from 5.9% in my 2023 fourth quarter report. Another economic indicator we continue to monitor is inflation. One of the measures used is the Consumer Price Index, which nationally has a 12-month percentage increase of 3.5% when comparing March of 23 to March of 2024. The Seattle metro area is slightly higher at 4.3% when comparing the same period. Both are slightly lower than my fourth quarter report, so continuing to trend in the correct direction. Locally, we look at the city's building activity. Single-family permits issued in the first quarter are up 41% for the same time period last year, with 24 new single-family permits issued. Multifamily permits for the first quarter are even higher, nearly quadrupling through first quarter, with 35 permits issued, and that equals 137 units. A lot of this is due to the changes in the code and a bunch coming in before that code change, so we may not see this trend continue. I think it's a one-time early spring thing. In terms of revenue generated, the city received 2.5 times more building permit revenue than last year's first quarter. This is another view of the single family homes. This shows the years comparison along the green line showing the increase in valuation. This is a great example that demonstrates what volatility of the construction industry. You can see from this data that permits have been down since the peak at 2021. This next slide looks at specific details regarding general fund. This slide shows where the money comes from in terms of budget. You can see that most of the general fund revenue is generated in the form of taxes at 68%, with the primary sources being sales tax, property tax, and utility taxes. Here's another view of the general fund revenue collected. The city collected 15% more revenue in 24 than it did in 23. A large part of the increase is due to the increase in building activity. You'll see those building permit fees up, and the charges for services in that previous slide were up, which is also associated with building. It's primarily the plan review fee. So in this slide, when reviewing trends, it's important to look at how we're doing compared to what was budgeted, in addition to the year-to-year changes. This slide compares the budget for what was collected in the first quarter in 2024. The general fund is approximately at 63%. We are looking to have collected at least 63% or 5/8. We've gone through 5 quarters of our 8 quarters in the biennium. So we're right on target. These next 2 slides will look at sales tax revenue in the general fund as shown in a previous slide. It's down 2%. This slide shows it again. Here's another view which compares the different business sectors. The retail sector decreased 4%, and that represents 40% of our sales tax collected in the city. And the construction is the other larger sector, which decreased 7% and represents 21% of the sales tax collected. Another major revenue source in the general fund comes from utility taxes. Overall, utility tax revenue decreased 2% compared to 2023. A large part of the decrease is due to the milder winter we had, and electric and gas utility taxes last year were much higher than previous years. Here's another look at the utility tax. Water, sewer, storm, and garbage taxes all saw increases, primarily due to rate increases. And as I said in the previous slide, you can see on that third chunk of bar graphs there that go back 1 slide. Yeah, went too far. There you go. So in electricity and gas saw decreases, but you can see that blue, the darker blue was abnormally high for gas and electric compared to 2024, or the red bar in that, we're pretty much normalized now. Telephone and cable are smaller utilities, and they're both declining. Another major general fund revenue source is property tax, which decreased 8% for the same time period in the prior year. The majority of property tax is collected in the second and fourth quarters, so these fourth quarter numbers being down shouldn't be a concern at this point. Where does the money go? Most expenses in the general fund are for public safety at 41%. This is a slight change from previous budgets, primarily just due to that larger transfer out of 15%. And that is for a well project, as well as increased support for our street fund. Here's another look at the by department on where your money goes. Total general fund expenditures were at 49% for the biennium. As a general guide, we're looking for 63% or less in this area, so doing well. The city has special revenue funds for streets, park, impact, criminal justice, and the library. This graph displays the major revenue sources for each of those funds. The street fund and library each saw a decrease. The library fund has the primary source of revenue from property tax, which again is primarily collected in the second and fourth quarters. The park impact fund is impacted by increased building activity. While the city has mitigation agreements for the 2 larger subdivision, the 35 multifamily permits issued did collect park impact fees, which is what accounts for that large increase. Remaining fairly flat are the fuel taxes, which have been flat or declining for several periods now. This picture of the special revenue expenditures. Most funds have remained flat with the exception of the criminal justice fund, as this has increased primarily due to the new leased police vehicles that were ordered November of 2022. They finally arrived early 2024 and we're now paying for them. In addition to the vehicles, there's increased operating costs associated with bringing on an additional administrative professional mid-2023, which is utilizing the public safety sales tax. Next, we'll look at our capital projects funds. This slide outlines the funds and their purpose. Fund 301. This fund holds State Route 224 project, as well as our real estate excise tax, or REIT 1. Fund 302 is REIT 2 funds primarily for pavement preservation, such as the North 62nd preservation project that we did in 2023. Fund 315 is the police bond funds. This was for the new police station. This project should be wrapping up. Fund 355 is a transportation improvement program, and it's where we do several larger transportation improvement projects, including the Bombing Range Keene intersection that was completed in 2023. For revenues for project fund, there wasn't a whole lot of activity for the police fund. This project is winding down. Both Fund 301 and Fund 355 have large capital projects that are receiving state and/or federal funds, which is why you see a little more revenue activity in those. So another source of revenue for 301 and 302 is the real estate excise tax. We saw a 42% increase in collections compared to the first quarter of last year. The bottom blue portion of this graph for 2024 represents the first quarter. If you look at the lighter blue, that's what we're forecasting for the rest of the year. Just to clarify, revenues for Fund 355 are from the traffic impact fees. The city saw an increase in collection compared to first quarter of last year. This large increase is primarily due to the building activity, specifically the large multifamily complex with 137 units. This graph shows expenditures for capital project funds for the first quarter. Not a lot of activity in the first quarter. There's a bit in Fund 301 with the State Route 224, which is just starting to pick up. These last few slides will take a closer look at our utility funds. For revenue, water collections increased 11%. These are approximately 5,748 water utility accounts billed at the end of March 2024. Sewer collections increased 9%, primarily due to the increase in residents over the last year, as well as the increase in rates. Here's an image of the irrigation revenue. Irrigation collections increased 6% for the first quarter of 2024. Looking at this, it was mostly due to the fact of it's a small utility, and so the timing of the payments kind of came in heavy on the March end. So this trend's not expected to continue through the year. This graph displays stormwater collection revenue up 29% compared to the first quarter of 23. Primarily due to increased rates as well as number of residents. And the last utility revenue is solid waste, up 5%, primarily due to rate increases as well as additional residents. And this final slide is a view of the utility fund expenditures. Most funds saw operating costs remain steady, with the exception of the solid waste utility, which saw an increase due to the EDS contract, which directly correlates with the increased revenue. Are there any questions?
Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Gwynn? Councilmember Bloom?
On slide 10, talked about sales tax for information services. What, that didn't jive in my mind. I mean, it's not significant, but
Yeah, I didn't dive into it. It's $2,000 and I was like, so yeah, it's a big percentage increase, but dollar increase is
well, no,
not
no, it's $14,000. I'm trying to figure out what we're taxing.
what we tax. I would have to look closer. I can't remember off the top of my head.
That just seemed a strange one. And then the solid waste revenue that you showed, was that reflecting all that's coming in before we pay eds?
Yes, that is gross revenue.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Gwynn, for the presentation. Next, it's going to be my pleasure to take a few minutes just to recognize one of the accomplishments of our fellow council member. As Secretary for the Association of Washington Cities, the association, which you may be familiar with, provides three major services to all 281 cities and towns in the state. Advocacy, representing the interests of the cities and towns. Services, providing member pooling programs to help our cities with providing insurance and other programs that they need. And then finally, education. And the Certificate of Municipal Leadership Program that AWC operates recognizes mayors and council members for accomplishing training in 5 competency areas. And this training gives them the knowledge to effectively operate within the law, plan for the future, secure and manage funds, foster strong relationships, and build equitable communities. Councilmember Fetto achieved his Certificate of Municipal Leadership in 2020. And there's a second level that is available for council members and mayors to achieve, and that is the Advanced Certificate of Municipal Leadership. And I'm pleased to have the honor of recognizing Councilmember Fetto for having achieved that last month. He is only the 4th council member in West Richland to achieve the Advanced CML. So I'd just like to personally congratulate you on behalf of the Association of Washington Cities. Thank you, Councilman. And the appropriate accoutrements, certificate and pin and so forth will be forthcoming. But I appreciate the work that you've done to give you the skills to better do your job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, which consists of payment of the bills, approving minutes for the regular meeting held on March 7th, 2024. Ordinance 1024, noise ordinance amendment, allowing one individual to begin enforcement of the code. Resolution 3724, setting a public hearing date for the 2025-2036 year Transportation Improvement Program. Motion to award Candy Mountain Pathway Kennedy Road Crossing Project. Motion to award School Zone Pedestrian Improvement Project. Motion authorizing the mayor to execute amendment number 3 to the Washington State Department of Transportation participating agreement for State Route 224 Red Mountain Vicinity Improvement Project. Motion to authorize amendment number 2 to engineering services contract with Tierra SR 224 Red Mountain Vicinity Improvement Projects right-of-way services. And also motion authorizing mayor to execute amendment number 2 to on-call engineering services contract JUB. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to comment on the consent agenda? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, is there anyone attending virtually who would like to comment on the consent agenda? If so, please raise your virtual hand. The acting city clerk will then unmute you, state your name and city of residence for the record, and provide your comments. And you can also press *9 to raise your hand if you're participating by telephone. Jessica, I don't see anyone, do you?
I do not.
Council, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We now have the opportunity for a first citizen public comment for items not on the agenda. If you wish to provide comments, please come to the podium. Kindly state your name and address. You will then have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Please remember that council cannot respond to your comments during this comment period, and that the time frame for comments this is the time frame for comments not related to items on the agenda. We will ask for comments about items on the agenda as those items are presented. Is there anyone attending who would like to make public comment?
My name is Kelly Smart. I'm a resident here in West Richland, and I wanted to speak on the pot shop issue. First, I want to share a summary of testimony shared by a mom named Whitney that was published on YouTube on March 14th, 2023. Please keep in mind, this is a shortened version of her testimony and is public on YouTube. Whitney's son, Sammy, experimented with marijuana in 8th grade, but he was convinced to stop and wait till he was adult to experiment. He was successful during high school and had all good grades. But when he was in college, he started his habit of smoking pot again. This led to an increase in mental health issues. His parents put him through clinics, psychiatric rehabs, therapy, all to try to help him with his mental health issues. Sammy was also a typical boy who had interest in guns. He purchased a couple and enjoyed shooting at the range. When Sammy was 23, he was hospitalized and the parents locked away the guns, but not in a good way. Sammy got one of them back. On March 31st, 2021, he tried to quit smoking pot again. But on April 3rd, his brain was in full withdrawal. He went on a hike with a new friend who did not know the seriousness of Sammy's history with THC and offered Sammy a joint. Immediately after the smoking the joint, Sammy thought he was lost in the woods, that he was being chased by someone who come after him. Ultimately, after some arguments with the gun, they got back the car driving home. A gun being waved around, Sammy was dropped off the side of the road by his friend who felt in danger. His friend called the police. Sammy resisted the police's order to drop his weapon and fired his gun in the direction of the police, hitting road signs, which resulted in Sammy being shot and killed by the policeman. Sammy was experiencing a terrible psychoactive episode induced by smoking marijuana. His mom wants the world to know that THC only makes mental health issues worse. That is only one example of many terrible results of marijuana. Sammy was in 8th grade, 13 to 14 years old, when he started. Many kids get exposed to that in school, especially when there's a marijuana shop in the neighborhood. We as West Richland do not want this in our community. We do not want the psychoactive drug to be any more accessible than it already is. Ask yourself this: how valuable was Sammy's life? How valuable are any children's life? Those who are for cannabis sales would say that gaining cannabis shops may gain you about $1,600,000 over the span of 10 years. That's only $160K a year. Is that worth the hundreds of lives this could destroy? The thousands? According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, approximately 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will become addicted. When they start before 18, the rate of addiction rises in 1 in 6. That could be one of our children. That could be any one of our grandchildren. What is the value of our posterity? What is the value of these lives we are impacting with this critical decision? I believe that $160K a year is not even close to the worth of a single child. There is no measurable amount because the children are priceless. The cost of allowing this cannabis store far outweighs the benefit of a meager $160K a year. Thank you.
Carrie Davies, 3706 South Lake Drive in West Richland. And just a couple of observations I wanted to share around the issue of the cannabis retail sales as well. In the community, I see in the news in the last week or so, the Richland School Board is making announcements about, is it a levy that's coming up or something to try and raise money, putting a high school in West Richland, which I think just creates another area with children in it and activity and families to be considered. if we're asking citizens in Richland and West Richland, Benton County to Richland School District to put money into investing into our schools, do we also want to be putting money into trying to invest to expand something like cannabis retail sales in the community as well? The other observation that I have is I attended the Parks Commission meeting last night, and there was some discussion around activity at the park at the lakes. And I live at the lakes and I walk it every day. And there is a noticeable cannabis odor when you walk around those parks. And there are people that are sometimes on watercraft in the ponds or hanging out down there. I want kids to be down there and have a good time. I want families to be down there and have a good time. I don't want myself to be able to smell that and walking around. Some of the activity with it, I don't know if people are just having a good time, but I just have a concern about the proximity of having the availability to purchase in our town. I know it's not far, is going to also encourage the usage of it in our town as well, especially in our public places. Thank you.
My name is David Cole. I live at 1710 Ironwood Avenue here in West Richland. And I just want to talk about the top 10 marijuana myths while we're on the subject of marijuana tonight. I have links. I'll make sure that I send each council member a copy of this. Myth number one, you can't get addicted to marijuana. Studies show 17% of adolescents who use marijuana become addicted, and 50% of daily users become addicted. High THC concentrates in dabs, vapes, and edibles increase the chance of addiction even more. Myth number two, marijuana can't lower your intelligence. Heavy marijuana exposure starting in adolescence predicts an 8-point drop in IQ. Number three, marijuana won't increase the odds of you using other drugs. Adolescent marijuana users are 2.5 times more likely to abuse prescription opioids. Myth number four, marijuana makes you a better, I can't even say this with a straight face, makes you a better driver. Marijuana decreases your reaction time, motor coordination, and driving skills. Myth number five, students who use marijuana are less likely to drop out of school. Young people who use cannabis are at a much more increased risk of poor academic performance and dropping out of school. Myth number six, marijuana can't cause mental illness. Marijuana can increase your risk of psychosis and schizophrenia fourfold. Number seven, your fertility rates can't drop if you use marijuana. Marijuana can actually reduce fertility due to decreased sperm counts and delayed ovulation. 8, you'll feel more motivated to do things if you use marijuana. Longtime marijuana users have lower levels of dopamine and are less ambitious and motivated. 9, smoking marijuana is not harmful to your health. Marijuana smoke can cause symptoms of chronic bronchitis, a heavy cough, and lung irritation. Number 10, marijuana can't kill you. Kelly just told you that one example of how it can. People have died from cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, and it's characterized by uncontrolled vomiting, comatose conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'll make sure each council member gets a copy of this because the links are there. You can research it on your own. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Seeing no one, is there anyone attending virtually who would like to provide a comment? If so, please raise your virtual hand. City clerk will unmute you and you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Once again, I ask you, please provide your name and address for the record. And you may also press *9 if you're participating via telephone. Jessica, I don't see anyone online. Do you?
I do not.
Thank you. Moving on to ordinance resolutions, motions, and public hearings. We have a closed record hearing. Items 8A and 8B are a closed record hearing and a motion to approve plat 003-2024, the Grove preliminary plat. Since this is a closed record hearing, I'll ask our city attorney, Ms. Jessica Foltz, to read through the hearing guidelines. And then we'll hear from planner Alicia Ransom for our staff report. Counselor Foltz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. A public body's decision on a quasi judicial matter must be based on and supported by the record in that matter. The record in this case consists of testimony or comment presented at the Planning Commission hearing, and all documents or exhibits that have been submitted in connection with the matter being considered. At this hearing, only parties of record will be allowed to provide comments, and no new information or documentation can be introduced. The purpose of this hearing is for the city council to consider the pertinent facts, applicable law, and to make a final decision on the Grove preliminary plat file number plat 003-2024. The appearance of fairness doctrine applies to this hearing. That document requires that this hearing be fair in form, substance, and appearance. The hearing must not only be fair, it also must appear to be fair. Therefore, at this time, I would like to ask a few questions of the council. First, has any member of the council engaged in communication with opponents or proponents regarding this issue outside of the public hearing process?
No.
Will any member of the council obtain any financial benefit or suffer a financial loss as a result of the outcome of this hearing?
No.
Is there any member of the council who believes that he or she cannot hear and consider this application in a fair and objective manner?
No.
Is there any member of the public, either proponent or opponent of this matter, who objects to the participation of any of the council members in hearing this matter? I do not see any.
Thank you, Counselor. I will now open the public hearing for any parties of records who would like to comment on this item at 6:31. Is there anyone present? Is there anyone attending online? If so, please raise your virtual hand or *9 on the telephone. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 6:31. Council, do I have a motion?
I move to approve preliminary plat number plat 003-2024, The Grove, based on the findings of fact, conclusions, of law, conditions of approval, and as recommended by the Planning Commission. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, are there any questions that have not been previously addressed by staff? Oh, excuse me, Alicia. I need the staff report. My mistake.
That may answer some questions.
Please.
All right, the applicant for this proposal is Knutson Engineering. They have applied on behalf of the developer, which is Walsh Group LLC. They have worked with the property owner in order to divide this property. It is 10.36 acres. It'll be subdivided in 2 phases. They're proposing 80 townhome residential lots, so those will be single lots with 0 lot line dwellings. The location is south of Kennedy Road, across from Angel Lake Court. Thank you. The application materials, those are located in attachment 1 of the staff report, and that starts on page 196. The application was submitted, it's signed by the property owner, which is different from the developer. But the property owner has authorized the proposed subdivision of the property. They submitted a preliminary plat map and a SEPA checklist, along with other required documents such as a title report and a variance report with property owners within 600 feet. The application was subject to the State Environmental Policy Act. The city issued a mitigated determination of non-significance on April 24th. That MDNS is included on page 250 of your packet. We received comments from Benton Clean Air Authority, which they submitted standard comments about soil destabilization and how to the notification required for that and how they are able to obtain that. We also received comments from Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. They requested a survey, but with that, they just requested, we did receive clarification from DAHP that that is simply a request and they can't require. Typically with that, if a tribe requests a survey, we do require that, but we didn't receive any tribal requests for surveys. Their comments have been included in the packet. But the developer must have, sorry, can you go back one slide? The property owner must have the developer must have an inadvertent discovery plan in place for any actions they do on the property. Department of Ecology submitted a standard comment about water quality. Ziply commented about their location of their infrastructure. We received no comments from Benton REA as well as Columbia Irrigation District. Their full comments start on page 256. With the public notice, can I get thank you. The public notice was sent to property owners within 600 feet on April 8th of 2024. We received one written comment from the public. That was from Bradley and Kristen Rowe. The additional homes, their concerns were that the additional homes would create additional noise and traffic and that the development would generate additional light pollution. In regards to the traffic, the project proponent will need to pay traffic impact mitigation fees per West Richland Municipal Code 16.14.200. That will mitigate any needed improvements to public streets. Additionally, there are several projects that addressed Kennedy Road on the city's 6-year transportation improvement program, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. They'll also be subject to noise regulations in WRMC 9.38, which is the chapter on noise regulation. That also, it addresses construction noise, vehicular traffic noise, and other noise related to residential use and development. The other concern that they had was about additional light pollution. The project will be subject to outdoor lighting standards found in WRMC 17.55. which require that site lighting be directed and shielded to minimize light trespass onto residential properties. Additionally, SEPA mitigation measure 17 from the MDNS requires that light fixtures shall be full cutoff type and shielded to minimize light spill and glare. We received several, as you can see, there we go. We received several comments, mostly from KID because the property is within KID's service area and the property is irrigable, the large portion of it. So they all have specific conditions related to that. Additionally, Benton REA requested a modification of easements on lots 20 and 21. That's included in your packet. So the property, as you can see, it's located south of Angel Lake Court, south of Kennedy Road. Next to it, we'll go to the next slide and talk about the comprehensive plan designation. So the property is adjacent to high intensity commercial, as well as high density residential, and then low intensity commercial to the west. And it will create a buffer between the higher density apartments that are to the east, and then provide lower than the high density apartments development on this property with the townhomes. So I'll provide a transition from the higher density apartments to the medium density residential and as well as the commercial. The proposal is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan, particularly housing goal A, which is to promote a variety of residential densities and housing types. The proposed development is also consistent with the requirements for high density residential development. Next slide, please. The property is zoned multifamily residential, and the lots meet the area and dimension requirements. The
proposed properties is the proposed lots, they will be each meet the minimum lot size of 1,800 square feet per lot. There is no maximum density in the medium density residential zone other than the required lot sizes. So they'll meet that, and the average lot size is around 4,000 square feet. Yes, next slide, please. So this is the plat map. As you can see, we'll come back to specifically the frontage, so tract C and then lots 1 and 67. But these lots specifically, the applicant requested a deviation from the requirement that a 6-foot tall CMU block wall be built along Kennedy Road. On tract C, they are proposing a park. And as part of their recreation area requirements for the multifamily, they want to have that visible from Kennedy Road for aesthetic purposes as well as for security purposes, having eyes on the street for the park. They are proposing, rather than a CMU block wall, they would like to put iron fencing. The city staff recommends that the deviation be approved under the following conditions. That the iron fence shall only be built along Kennedy Road frontage of tract C. Lots 1 and 67 shall still have that 6-foot tall CMU block wall. The fencing type shall be approved by the city prior to installation. The fence shall be placed at the back of any easements along the road right of way. So they have requested that. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of that deviation. If I could get the next slide, please. So with the 6-year transportation improvement program, there's several projects in the area of Kennedy Road that will address traffic impacts of not just this development, but there's other development happening in the Kennedy Road area. So that will help alleviate some of the traffic stresses, and the traffic impact fees that are collected for this project, they'll go towards those projects as funded by the 6-year TIP. That's what's on the 6-year TIP right now. That may change in the future, but plans are in place for the city to address those impacts. With the Planning Commission meeting, we did receive comments from the applicant. They spoke on behalf of the benefits of the project and elements that would address concerns for the neighboring property owners. And then Brad Rowe, who also submitted written comments, he's the neighboring property owner. And he appreciated that the city has plans to address concerns that they have and propose conditions of approval that would mitigate impacts. The Planning Commission voted to recommend to council that they approve the plat with the change to condition 22, which updates the IBC code cycle to the correct code cycle from 2018 to 2021. Additionally, staff recommends that that council approve the preliminary plat based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ransom. So council questions? Councilmember Bloom.
Just for clarification, relative to the fence, I'm reading the staff report. It says the staff recommended that the Planning Commission recommend to the city that deviation be approved. So did the Planning Commission put that in their findings of fact?
Yes, as I said, they did address that and did recommend that the deviation be approved.
The way it's worded in the staff report. Overall, my concern, especially since I've lived in this type of neighborhood, we might need to address code. Parking, on-street parking is going to be a pain. The two feeder streets are listed as 37-foot width. Are those city streets?
They're private and they will be no parking on either side.
why would they make it 37 foot? I mean, the alleyways in between them, I mean, these fronts won't, you can't put a parking. And so there are 8 extra parking spaces in this entire subdivision shown associated with that park out front.
There's also tract B, Mr. Bloom, if you look at that, it's also a private parking lot. So they do have some areas on site where they are proposing parking to be able to alleviate some of that stress.
Well, I mean, overall, I'm not sure how we've been doing some of our row houses. But with the small frontage, which they'll have a driveway and a garage, which of course nobody ever parks their car in the garage, especially when you have a very small lot. I see, you know, a visitor is out of luck. UPS delivering is going to be a problem. I'm just a little concerned that we don't really address parking for these large developments.
So they are required to provide 2 spaces per unit.
Right, one in the garage, one in the
No,
driveway.
the garage can't count towards the total.
2 in the
2 in the driveway. So they'll have to provide other than the garage parking spaces. And that's typically done with the driveway, and we will count and make sure there's sufficient area.
You know, I can tell you that from my experience, not having any on-street parking creates very boisterous neighbors. Anyway,
Member Smart?
Questions. So the park, that's going to be a future city maintained park?
No,
it's
that will
not.
be private.
It will be private. Okay.
Mm.
So folks will drive by, see it on the road. I mean, there will be signs posted? Is it only for the use of the residents?
That will be up to
Right.
the HOA to decide how they want to manage that.
Okay. Proper light shielding. I think we addressed city streetlights. I mean, I am sensitive to the impact to the neighbors who look like they have a nice parcel in the corner here. It looks like it may have been cut out of some original parcel. I looked up that this property has been zoned this way for at least 5 years. That's when my map was printed, maybe longer. So I just want to mention on the record that this potentiality for this housing development have been, you know, known for some time. However, I have had discussion with, you know, the planning subcommittee and Mr. Mendenhall that, you know, I too am concerned about these repetitive developments that have such small frontages and street parking and the narrow roads and so forth. And I understand that not everybody is looking for a plantation, but wow, it just seems like these are really condensed, and I'd love to see more plans coming about to our table that show, you know, homes that really are the traditional RM 6,000 or something like that with true 6,000 square foot lots. So I'll just make that statement. And I think that our zoning code, you know, to me, this is high density, and you've stated that this is a buffer between high density and a lower density, and it doesn't seem like a great buffer to me. But that said, back to my question. Sorry for the monologue. I wanted to take the opportunity to make some opinions here, so that's on record. I wanted to ask: is there a wall around this community?
They will be required to put a wall around, per the conditions of approval. They'll be required to put a wall on against any properties that are abutting that are less intensive uses. So the Rose property and the property to the east
Mhm.
that is also RM6, but there's a certain place where it abuts commercial limited.
Right.
So they wouldn't be required to put it there, but they, against the abutting residential, they'd be required to.
And what is that wall gonna be comprised of? Is that a concrete?
CMU.
Okay. At 6 feet or? higher?
Correct.
Okay. So then my other concern was, like I said, the light shielding on the streetlights. I'm sure, Roscoe's folks are very effective at doing that, and I appreciate that. What about the building structures themselves? Is there a requirement that, their back porch light isn't gonna be shining in the adjacent neighbors?
So they'll be required, anything that they're doing for the development at large will go through the review, and they'll have to demonstrate with a photometric lighting plan that they're not trespassing on other properties.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I'm sure the neighbors would as well.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of residences that'll be backed into these folks' backyard, the Rose backyard.
Just as a piece of information, there is a grade change that this property
Saw
is
that.
located
Mhm.
higher up, and
Yeah.
so that
So
that will
see, it
provide
goes-
additional
So the
buffer.
rows are higher. Their property's higher than the,
No,
oh, it's the other
the
way around.
other way around.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I didn't take the time I saw the topography there, but I wasn't sure which way it went. Okay, and then the other thing I would just mention is in the SEPA review on item number 9, I would like to see the honest assessment that it does say, that there will be residences next door and so forth, but I think that to be full disclosure, we should indicate that there is an impact to the character of the neighborhood, so to speak, right? I mean, this isn't just there will be 80 new neighbors and 47 traffics in the afternoon. There's also a significant cultural change to the character of the environment and the neighborhood. And I just think that, I'm not saying that's gonna change anything, but I just think that if you're going to write a report on the nature of the impact to the environment, that might be something that we note. And maybe in some circumstances in the future, that would precipitate some mitigation, but I don't see how it could here. So it's kind of a moot point, but I just noticed that and I thought, if I were the adjacent neighbors, I would think that maybe I was being purposefully skipped over as having being any part of the environment, which of course they are, right? They're humans in a residence. So I'd want to see that put down there. And then I think that I would like to see us review both the zoning in the city and what we can do with the individual zone area. So I'll just repeat that. I know Eric knows that I've been asking for that, and the subcommittee members as well. So I think that there's a place for developments like this, and this isn't necessarily a terrible spot, but just to say that this code and our zoning needs to be reviewed so that these type of developments are really going in where we want them as a city. So, but as far as this one in particular, I think that was the end of my questions and comments. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you, council.
I see no other council members wish to ask questions. We have a motion and a second on the table. Call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Elise. Council, we have no unfinished business this evening, nor do we have any new business, so we'll move on to the second opportunity for citizen comment. Once again, if you wish to provide comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and kindly keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. Is there anyone present here that would like to speak?
Kelly Smart, 400 South 54th Avenue. I have an additional point to make regarding the pot shop. Additionally, the negative impacts to business could be drastic. According to an article by Dr. Eileen Griffin Ray discussing this very debate, actually, she cites the experience of a Tri-Cities business with a pot store near neighbor in Pasco, and I quote her article here. One existing business, Tri-Cities 911 Driving School, has been operating since 2014. Owners Sid and Margie Grant said they were given no warning about their new neighbor, the cannabis shop, but very quickly realized the impact. Recently, Sid witnessed a fight in the parking lot as people were coming out of the cannabis store. There were two cars with 4 men in each. The altercation ended without physical violence, but it was concerning for the business owners. They were hollering and screaming at each other in the parking lot. Sid said, I had to keep my employees inside and pull kids back into the building. I thought it won't be long before the guns come out. Sid said his students must maneuver around people just to get to the building. They now have homeless people and panhandlers in the parking lot. They had a person bring a guitar and put out a hat for money. The other businesses have to work around these activities as well. These people have no respect, Sid said. It used to be a very peaceful place, but now it's an ugly place to have business. Margie said one of her main concerns is the traffic. She said customers drive far too fast, racing to get to the cannabis store. There were constant flow of cars, and they seem to always be in a rush. Also, the odor has been a big problem for a driving school. It's a horrific smell, Sid said. It gets in your clothes, your hair, and it inhibits the whole building. We brought diffusers for the inside of the building, but some days the odor is just too strong. Some days it's just more potent than the others, Margie said. The Grants were not aware that the lifting of the cannabis ban would result in stores moving in next to their existing business. They tried to sell the business, but were unable to, and believed that the cannabis store drove people away. They can't sell the business. They could consider moving, but that would be really expensive. As an owner, I don't want to walk away from what I built and have to start all over again, Sid said. Sid says that people need to pay attention to this and know that what the cannabis business is all about. The way to avoid these problems is not to let them in at all. Either keep it out or it needs to be very tightly controlled. It should be in a separate business far away from any commercial area. Once you let them in, it's too late and you can't do anything about it. So I think that West Richland does not need this for their businesses or their children and their lives. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present here? I'll also ask anyone attending virtually who'd like to provide a comment to please raise your virtual hand. You may also press *9 if you're attending via telephone. Is there anyone virtually attending who would like to make a comment? I don't see anyone, do you? All right.
I do not.
Thank you. All right, staff, council, and reports. Any staff members wish to make a report this evening? None. Council. Councilmember Bloom.
Well, Councilmember Hayes and yourself attended the ECA conference.
Yep.
I moved here 1980 to work at the Fast Flux Test Facility, which is a sodium-cooled semi-breeder reactor enriched fuel. And what the ECA conference was talking about is the next generation reactors, which are modular reactors. Unlike the gigantic, I would say, commercial reactors of the past, like Columbia Generating Station, which is a 1,200 megawatt electric, which is, significantly larger than what they were talking about. Maximum, most were looking at the 100, 200 megawatt, or even smaller. These are reactors which have been sailing the seas for years in the Navy. They are basically extremely safe. We'll see if they can make them cost competitive as it goes on, but it appears that they have their niche. They're out to replace coal plants. I'm not quite sure if the community is ready for that, both permitting wise, et cetera. The first ones are going in Texas. Well, Texas has nuke plants. They can handle them. The ones in Wyoming, I'm still really concerned because Wyoming does not know what a nuclear reactor is. They know uranium. But we'll see how that goes. But I was heartened by the number of options that were coming up, and there were no protesters there, so that's my view. So I appreciated the information shared, and I thought it was a good conference.
Councilmember Bloom. Councilmember Hayes.
Mayor Pro Tem, I agree with Richard. It was a nice conference. It's the first conference that I've been to, dealing with the nuclear plants and everything that's out there. So it's very interesting and very informational. And I do sit on the Hanford Communities with Richard. And so I took it in as a huge learning experience on what's really here in the Tri-Cities. So I'm grateful for having that opportunity. The other thing I want to talk about is tomorrow's our big day. We have our Tri-Cities Veteran Cemetery Town Hall. It will be at the West Richland Police Department from 10 to 12. And we have Olympia coming over, Washington State VA coming over, and they'll be the presenters alongside of Rudy Lopez, who manages the Medical Lake National Cemetery. So this is an amazing opportunity for our whole region, for all of our vets. I've had the opportunity over this last 5 months to really get out in the communities from Moses Lake to Walla Walla to Umatilla to Yakima, and that's the service area of what this national cemetery would be. And it's just amazing how many veterans that we do have in this region. And that's why the federal government and the state has picked the Tri-Cities as the place for the cemetery. We just have to find the land. So if anybody has 100 acres of land that they want to give to the cemetery, we'll gladly take it. But tomorrow it should be very informational, and it looks like we should have well over 100 people or more at the town hall, and they'll be there to answer all your questions. So I encourage everybody to come that wants to come, and we stand behind our veterans. I love this region for what we do for our veterans, and this would just be beautiful because so many veterans just want to be buried at home. And that's what I heard over and over from people that we've met with. So I'm really excited about this project, and I just love to invite everybody to come and see what's happening in this area. Thank you.
Councilmember Smart.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank our members of the community for speaking tonight, and also, I just wondered if we could maybe impose on our representative from our police force here tonight to, if you can say what the laws are for smoking marijuana in a park. Is that something that's not allowed, right? And how would you respond if somebody called about that?
Apparently, it's not in our code that prohibits it.
Is that right? Well, I'm glad I brought it up then. So I would like to propose to council that we review this topic and make sure that it is absolutely prohibited to smoke marijuana or drink alcohol in our parks. How about that?
I
No?
will say that under state law, it is an infraction to consume marijuana in public. So if there was a sheriff's deputy nearby, they could enforce that.
I see. So we can call the sheriff. Okay, so that would be our instruction, is to call the sheriff's office, but I think 911 would probably get you there, right? Right? If you saw someone consuming marijuana on a park bench in West Richland. Do I get a consensus on that? Anybody? No? Yeah, would that get a response? It would. Oh, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
this,
that.
this Councilman Smart, this came up at the park board meeting last night.
Oh, I didn't
So
know.
our code talks about alcohol in the parks not being prohibited and that being something we should add to the list, just to be clear.
Perfect,
but-
perfect, excellent. So look forward to that coming up to the, on the agenda soon, right? Okay, thank you. Because that is shocking. I hate the smell of this stuff. It's really bad. I suppose it has to make you high in order to tolerate the smell of it. Just saying. But yeah, no, it's not, shouldn't be part of our environment here in West Richland. I would heartily agree. So thank you for that.
Lastly, I'll just follow on what Councilmember Bloom said with regard to the Energy Communities Alliance Conference. I enjoyed attending. I couldn't attend all the sessions, but the ones I did attend, I found very informative. For our area, solar is not the answer for reliable energy. Wind is not the answer for reliable energy. But we have a proven record in the United States of operating safely. Our submarine fleet, which is nuclear powered, as Councilmember Bloom pointed out. And that's what we need if we're going to have reliable energy to meet our needs in the future. Yep, we only lost one. But so I was appreciative of that opportunity. As a veteran among several here on city council, I will be at tomorrow's meeting. Looking forward to it. I too am a strong proponent of what Councilmember Hayes has really pulled together to try and make this effort work for our city. It's important. And if anyone is able to come tomorrow, even if you can just show up briefly, please do so. And 10 o'clock, yes. And lastly, council, we do have an executive session this evening pursuant to RCW 42.30.110C to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale. We will exit to the executive session for 15 minutes, returning at 7:21. And there will be no action to follow. So if we would, please adjourn.
Okay.
I go with you? Okay.
Yeah, we have enough, especially if it's during the season. Train. Well, apparently, yeah. Yeah, he either came back the next night, but said that. Or we just never saw it, and then the first girl runs out. Yeah, but I got that message. Yeah. It's got to be like, yikes, and then he was pissed off that I told the police and they took away his suitcase, or I threw away his suitcase. Yeah. Those were like, it was spray paint. It was spray. Spray paint. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. That's the new one. Yeah. That's the new one, but you know. Yep. It makes sense to them, and no one else. Right. Yeah, we do, but they're on the side, so we actually went out today. We have like 4 now, and you can see out front, sides, yeah, interior, camera, light. Which is crazy. Well, helps us. Sure. Oh, yeah. That's it. That forward is so good. Sorry. Yeah, and then pretty awesome. Fully staffed. Typically, that's a good day. Yeah. We got rid of that. Yeah, we thought of that. That's terrifying. Black hole. That's still correct. Yeah. Well, I don't know if anybody else. We'll do what we do. Yeah. Yeah, it's not Montana speaking. No, it's no. And then it's here, just take the $50, okay? You're on the way back. You have to stay. No. You know, and it, so, well, you have no investment. You just want to come in. That's not. It's a lot. They say, no, we don't want that, that's good for our community. So all I get left. Help me to understand why this is good for our community. That- Yep, and it's. It's a bit chill. It's a bit chill. Too cold in here, too hot. I can't never. It's that rain.
I love it.
Are we good with the time?
Bring my galoshes. Good. Lakefront properties.
Let's see. We've timed out. Executive session had Action to follow. This meeting is adjourned at 7:21. Thank you all.